But power also means pylons that carry the nation's electricity across the land. Today, we're telling the story of the men that build them, the Pylon Men. These are the men who have made danger their stock in trade. Real-life danger men who climb up to a world of work that most of us might conveniently ignore, but it must be done. This is how they build the 165 feet high steel towers that will carry the Central Electricity Generating Board's cables across Sussex and Hampshire to the West Country. Might say that the Pylon Men work above the ground level controversy that goes on before the plans for Britain's power gets the go-ahead. But when the decisions have been made and the best course plotted, the steel giants stride 5 to the mile across the fields, and the huge dish insulators can be slotted into place. It's a long haul, and this is all weather work, seriously hampered by mud and rain. But on average, the Pylon Men complete 2.5 miles of their route every week. Here's a balancing act that's a workaday routine, and they say you get used to it. But you need more than a head for heights, because this is as delicate a job as threading a needle, calling for steady, split-second teamwork. And when the steel towers and glass insulators are exactly in place, it's time for the big job of putting the power lines into position. This is a hard slog that usually goes on miles from anywhere, so the Pylon Men have to be self-supporting and keep the tools of the trade with them on the spot, which means giant cable drums have to keep rolling across country as the towers go on ahead. 4 steel-cored, aluminium-coated conductor cables make what the Pylon Men call a bundle. Their job, to carry a 400,000-volt load of electric power to supply the national grid. There's no room for a wayward wire, so the job of pulling the conductor cables up into place is a radio-controlled operation, fined down to the last millimeter, so that the bundle is stringed, as they call it, through the insulator at exactly the right tension, sometimes a tense moment. Although in these days of automation we're cutting out the elbow work, joining up the cables to make a continuous power line hundreds of miles long is something that still goes best by hand. Putting cables underground costs 10 times the price of pylon power. When the railways were first laid down, it was feared the flaming hot coals would burn up the whole of Britain. Now the age of steam is over, people are more concerned that we've lost our railway heritage. In days to come, pylons too may have their champions, eager to preserve them as historic monuments. But the job of spacing the cable goes on, calling for a high wire act that would thrill any circus audience. This is where the Pylon Men turn spacemen. So the wires don't bang together and short the whole system. They're kept apart by flexible spacers, what you might call keeping up the high tension. With their skill and daring, the Pylon Men carry the amenity of electricity to remote places. And the pylons themselves certainly have their own kind of grandeur as they march across the land.